So everybody's been given one of the silviculture keys. Is this the first time for people using these? Okay. So when Gareth was given this challenge to try and develop this key, as I said, it really causes a forest professional to rethink how you want to develop a prescription and a key. For years, myself and my colleagues, when we entered into these stands, quite often you had 2 or 3 goals or objectives that you were trying to develop as you were putting a prescription in place for a landowner. And we all know what the first one is. It's, you know, generally it's financial related and fiber driven. But quite often landowners would have other goals around recreational values, wildlife, and those types of things. Those things are very easy to, well, I shouldn't say easy to manage for, but they're traditional. They're always in the back of your mind. Now, when we're looking at these stands and recognizing what's in front of us with respect to climate, it really forces you to think outside the proverbial box. And we talked about back in the dooryard, what species are going to be challenged in the future, which ones are going to prosper. Are these boreal species that we tend to put a lot of weight on, are they going to be able to tolerate the changes that are anticipated? So the documents that are coming around at your leisure, they're sort of the highlights and the conclusions of the Anthony Taylor report and the literature review that Megan did. I would encourage you to take the time to brush up on the perspective or the view of the species that are supposed to succeed in the future and those that are going to be challenged. So when Gareth designed this key, if you've just flipped to the inside cover, the first thing that he asks when you're trying to assess these stands is, first of all, is the stand dominated by a single effective age? Pretty straightforward here. Not too many age classes. Everybody agree? So if it is yes, you jump to key 2. So you simply turn your binder over. So the next question that is asked is the stand in the initiation stage? No, it's pretty well developed. So if not, you step to the left-hand side of your key. Is the stand in the stem exclusion stage? Stem exclusion is just a fancy way to put, is the stand starting to break up? Is it deteriorating? Is it coming apart? We don't see any evidence of that yet. So the next, you follow down the no side. Does the stand have unique old forest conservation value that can only be maintained free of a silviculture treatment? Does this have old growth characteristics? No. Okay. Easy. So if that's the case, it directs us now to key 3. I have to flip a couple of pages. So make sure you get 3 because I think there's 3A, 3B, and 3. Yep, page 6. Page 6. So it now asks, is the stand truly uneven aged with at least 3 distinct age classes? Obviously, no. Is the canopy composition acceptable, i.e. adequately stocked to low-risk species? Now you're going to have to stop here. It is adequately stocked, low risk. Question. I wouldn't say the jury's out on red spruce, but Megan and anybody else, from the literature I've read, red spruce, some theorize, is going to do relatively well till about 20, 40, 50, and then it's going to really get challenged. So the history on this site, as you fellows can see, it has been managed. It was pre-commercially thinned in 1991 by the landowner. So we're going to, it was at least 10 years old, probably, or more when it was thinned. So that's putting the spruce up to 40-ish. As we know, red spruce can go for decades beyond that. And crap, I meant to bring that cookie that was in my office. Sidebar, I got a red spruce cookie that sits beside my desk, and my son works on crown operations anyway. He was cutting some red spruce and Rishabucto, or Renew, sorry. Anyway, red spruce is one of our preferred species when it comes to Silvix. It has a huge, tremendous ability to respond to being released. Anyway, this is a sidebar. If I had the cookie with me, I would say it's 2.5 feet across. It's 200 years old, But the catch is, at the center, the size of a beer can, it was 80. 80, and it's as white as chalk. And was released at age 80 and went for 200 years, and I'm sure it could have went another 100. That's what we're looking at here. So with that in mind, not everybody wants to grow 200-year-old red spruce. So getting back to the point, this was thinned 29 years ago. It probably was 10 years old at the time or more, so we're putting this up around 39, 40 years of age. So getting back to the question, is the canopy composition acceptable with adequately stocked low-risk species? So having said that, I would suspect you could probably get 30 or 40 more years out of this red spruce without any substantial challenges. So let's say yes. Any disagreements or want to consider something different? Okay, if we say yes, you continue in your key. Is the regen layer present and desirable, i.e. sufficiently stocked to low-risk species? Obviously, we have no regen. So it directs us to key 3A. Is the regeneration layer desirable? So it's the same question. We've said no, so you go to the left-hand side of your key. Is the stand mature and has reached an ideal time to regenerate the stand, and or there are no desirable crop trees to work with? That's a bit of an ambiguous question, and it's loaded, so you try to take it one question at a time. Is the stand mature and reached the ideal time to regenerate the stand? No. No, okay. Are desirable growing stock crop trees suppressed and in decline?
Got some pretty small crowns.
It depends on who you ask that question to, if it's suppressed or not. The fiber-oriented financial part of us would say, well, you know, we got to do something in here. Crowns are getting small, as Tina said. It's time to start thinking about releasing this stand to give it more opportunity to grow. So this is where you're going to have conflicting perspectives on the next step. If you say that you don't think it's suppressed, it is red spruce. Remember I said that red spruce cookie that I had at work? It was suppressed for 80 years. Not that I would encourage a landowner to keep this in a suppressed state, but it is red spruce. It has very unique characteristics. So right here is where you've come to a divergence. You have to make a decision. Are you going to say that it's not suppressed, and it's suggesting simply leave it for 5 years? If you say it is suppressed, it asks, is thinning feasible or desirable and does not conflict with carbon storage objectives? So this is sort of the first point in the key where it's asked you to start thinking about carbon objectives. One of the fundamental principles around trying to secure more carbon on a piece of land is thinking a variety of age classes, and of course we only have one age class here, but if you really want to drive carbon and sequester carbon, you got to start developing other age classes and other components in the stand. So if you have that in the back of your mind, you should be thinking, well, maybe I can sequester more carbon on this if I do a light thinning and try to start the next crop. So if you said yes, is thinning desirable? It says, all right, it shoves you over to the right-hand side and then recommends a thinning treatment. So that's sort of the basis of it. Questions?
Chris, can I offer a piece of context about this key that might help folks? Because you did touch on it just now talking about carbon, but it might help people thinking about this key that when Gareth was designing it, we for Community Forests International commissioned Gareth to create the first draft of this key, and the instructions that we gave to Gareth were that we asked him to first consider how to increase the climate change resilience of a stand that works its way through this key. Second objective was to increase the carbon sequestration of that stand. So to increase the climate change mitigation capacity of the forest. So number one was resilience, number two was carbon. And then if you'll notice, we haven't really talked about timber production through any of this. The idea then is that timber is a byproduct of this. It is not the primary goal. So that is a challenge that forestry professionals have ahead of them when they use this, is how do you integrate any timber objectives as well as the primary and secondary objectives of resilience and then carbon. So I just want to put that in front of you because timber is not one of the primary objectives of this key. Once you've had a chance to read through a lot of these materials, the projections for future growth, forest growth and yield are that many of the species that are projected to decline, of course, are going to be growing less, right? They're not going to be growing as much wood. Whereas the species that are projected to do okay or even well will be producing more wood because we have more favorable conditions in the future for growth and yield. But that means that if you follow these keys and if you manage your forest to become more resilient to climate change, then you are inherently growing it to produce more wood. So the timber objective as a byproduct should, in the end, generate more wood for you by following these keys. I hope that helped put some context around that.
So if you were doing a thinning now with that carbon storage in mind, you know, how would you execute that? What, just around us, which trees would remain and which trees would go?
Well, speaking from a fiber perspective, you're obviously going to be trying to target, and the fallout benefit is the carbon, but just the opposite of what Megan was saying. But if you want to do both, you're going to be looking for the most stable, well-rooted crop trees in here. You know, there's no point in trying to select a tree that's been suppressed or is a co-dominant. So as you look around, you know, some of the dominant trees really stand out and will continue to prosper. So those are going to be the leaf trees.
Chris, I'm curious, it does qualify under the provincial program. Are you guys planning on doing it?
Well, Neil just can speak to that. He's asking if the owner's interested, or?
This particular landowner, he's been around for decades, and we actually drove by his border, loading some wood there to the left coming in. He's 90 years old. His son just bought a wheeled John Deere harvester, and I actually spoke to him yesterday afternoon asking if he would consider doing some commercial thinning on his wood lot. And right now, with his experience and his capabilities, he's not interested, the short answer. But I think this stand would benefit from a commercial thinning to balance your timber and your carbon values moving forward. It comes down to experience and capabilities a lot of times, and unfortunately we're starting to less operators in this area are capable of those treatments. So that's a big challenge I think we're going to be facing moving forward.
So with the ownership of the property, and that raises an interesting point, the current registered owner is in his 90s, has worked in the woods literally for decades. And you know, he's in the process of transitioning or transferring these properties to the next generation. So I suspect as the property changes hands, you're going to see a different perspective on what can be done on the property. And when you see the next generation taking a hands-on approach and actually buying a wheel processor, it gives you some encouragement that they are thinking about continuing the intensive management of the property.
Can I say a word about red spruce before we? I just wanted to give everybody a little something to think about, because I think maybe it was the email you circulated, or you mentioned something about eco zones. So and we have people from across the province here, so it might be worth just thinking a little bit about, you know, red spruce, its primo habitat is that cool coastal maritime climate. And we're here in Sussex, which is just, you know, inland a bit, so we still get some of that maritime influence here. So the projections for red spruce in this area, in this ecozone, are pretty stable for the next 30 or 50, maybe 50 years, 30 years though. But of course, the closer you get to sort of Fredericton and maybe the Washtenamowick area, where it's that heat sink part of the province, right? It's very warm, it stays warm, there's not much of that cool maritime influence. There aren't high elevations. That's a much more threatened area for red spruce. So if you're coming from the greater Fredericton area, then you might want to think a little differently about how you handle red spruce in that area as compared to here, for example.
What would be a good alternative?
to plant. Right. So kind of the winners for climate change that we keep talking about are in a softwood, white pine. There aren't too many options when it comes to the softwoods, unfortunately. Yeah, yeah.
We won't go into that.
Yeah, that's a whole other discussion.
All right, well, this was the easy stand. All right, we're just going to cross the road.
Much different stand type. A little more diverse over here. We have multiple different species. I would suggest this is more of a irregular, uneven age class structure. So with that, if we go through the key, the very beginning, is this stand dominated by a single effective age?
No, sir.
No, sir. Yeah, so we're going on a different direction for this stand. So we are going to go directly to key 3, multi-age stands. Okay. So, is the stand truly uneven aged with at least 3 distinct effective ages, i.e. multiple cohorts? Feel free to participate, and the more communication we have as a group, I think the more productive this will be. So, anyone want to comment on that? With what we have here for age classes?
What do you consider distinct age?
That's a good question. I mean, I think. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, you go ahead. Answer the question.
Well, I think distinct. I mean, I think if you look in the canopy, we have a dominant crown here in white pine, eastern white pine, and then you can obviously see some large tooth aspen coming up. I think as we came in, we seen some stumps present. So this stand was partially harvested over the years. I would suggest we have balsam fir coming up as well, which is taller than the large tooth aspen in some cases. And as we all know, large tooth aspen or poplar grows fairly quick as they need sunlight. So I would suggest that balsam fir is older than that large tooth aspen, but that's my educated guess. So yeah, distinct age classes, I mean, would be different, in my opinion, different ranges.
And then, yeah,
How old's the red spruce?
well, that stuff's probably 20 plus too.
Yeah, that's right.
Remember that cookie I was telling you about? So just for shits and giggles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. There's probably 30-year-old spruce right there. So just waiting for its opportunity. Large tooth isn't on the winner's list, is it?
It does better than trembling. It's projected to do better than trembling,
Okay,
but it's not a winner.
no,
It's not a winner.
no.
It'll persist longer though.
So what do we have here for winners? Which species here are predicted to do well in the future?
White pine.
White pine. Yeah. What else do we have? Anything
Red
else?
pine.
No.
No?
No.
Red pine's not a winner?
Nope.
Red maple?
Red maple. There you go. Yeah. I think we did see a hemlock coming in. but
We
maybe-
did. There were a couple back there.
Yeah. Hemlock would be another winner.
Now you got to kind of qualify hemlock.
I do have to qualify hemlock.
Climate and drought stress, all those factors have certain impacts. Other things that changing climate has on our trees is insects and disease. and hemlock is impacted significantly by hemlock woolly adelgid and is expected to get worse. Okay, Neil?
Yeah, so I guess we got to ask the question, is this stand truly uneven aged? Yes. Okay, so we are going to go to 3B, uneven age sylviculture systems. Now I get my page. Okay. Now we're going to look at the regeneration layer. The first question, is the regeneration layer and ingrowth in the stand acceptable or desirable? I.e., is it adequately stocked to low-risk species? And again, we're all standing around this small area. And when we're managing stands as a whole, we would generally walk the entire stand and get a good assessment of the stand and what we're dealing with.
I was going to say, I was trying to look in there a little bit to see what I can see, because
Yeah.
we did come in on this path where there's lots of maple
Yeah.
kicking around.
I'm guessing balsam fir is quite a high risk.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
compared to the spruce.
Probably
Yeah.
the most high-risk
Yeah.
species. Yeah.
So we have spruce, we have a lot of balsam fir. I saw the odd white pine, but as far as adequately stocked,
One little baby red oak here.
oh, there you go. Red oak is a winner.
Yeah.
Yeah. And personally, I see a lot more red oak around this area lately. Maybe I'm looking for it more, but I seem to see it in areas where I historically did not see red oak. Yeah. So, what are we going to do here? Is it adequately stocked to low-risk species, yes or no?
I would say no. There certainly are low-risk species present, but adequately stocked, I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. So, we move down to no. Is desirable, i.e. low risk natural regeneration, feasible through site preparation and or vegetation management?
So what that's getting at is it's asking, should we consider some type of artificial site prep, dragging chains through here or underplanting? Given the neighborhood that we're in, shouldn't need to. Would you agree? Like, it's got great capabilities.
I have a question. I have a question about vegetation management. Would it be on the table to manage some of the understory that's here to increase the proportion of winning species in the understory? I think that
Could be a possibility, yeah. Manual cleaning of some sort.
Right.
Yeah.
I see stands with red oak and sugar maple and advanced balsam fir
Right.
competing with those
Right.
species.
Right.
I think that would be a
That'd
great
be a
opportunity.
really clear.
Yeah.
That'd be a really clear one, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But here, I think if we look at the stand, I would suggest this stand was partially harvested 20 years ago in that neighborhood. Just looking at the large tube, I would say that would be my guess of when this was previously treated, and this is what we're dealing with for regeneration here today. So the question is can we achieve natural regeneration? Is desirable low risk natural regeneration feasible through site prep and or vegetation management?
I think part of this we have to define feasible
Yeah, that's a good.
for a woodlot owner.
Yep. No, this is where it can get a little
This is where it
subjective.
gets sticky, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
extremely subjective.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say no. That's what my
I would
knee-jerk reaction is.
Agree.
Okay, we should go that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
So
Follow
if
that
we go
trend.
no, and we can go back and
Yeah.
go the other way.
We did
devil's
that many
advocate?
times yesterday. We were looking for an answer, and then we back up on the key and say, well, what if we did this?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go no. Let's go no.
Okay.
Is artificial regeneration of low risk species feasible? So can we underplant or interplant this area? Knowing this area personally, I know this area regenerates very well naturally. I think anything is feasible, but I think
Is it reasonable? Maybe?
reasonable.
Is that a better question?
So I think let's continue on the no path, and that brings us to key 3A, irregular silviculture systems.
Back to 3A.
Yeah, right back to where we. Okay. Is the regeneration layer desirable? I.e., is this bringing us right back?
It's
to
the
where
same question, I think, at the beginning.
Yeah, it
of the
just
last
repeats the
one,
question.
yeah.
Okay. So we're going to say no. Is the stand mature and has reached the ideal time to regenerate the stand, and or there are no desirable crop trees to work with? Do we have desirable crop trees in the stand?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think we can say no
To that question.
to that question. Are desirable grow and stock crop trees suppressed and in decline?
No.
No.
So the red spruce is not a desirable?
It would be in the short term.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's definitely suppressed.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, this is, yeah.
Yeah.
But it says the stock crop trees. The question is talking about the crop trees, not the regen.
Okay. Missed that.
Yeah.
So in this case, we were talking about the white pine, the canopy
In this
layer.
case, we're talking about the white pine.
Yeah, well, your crop trees are the pine and, these spruce.
Yeah.
Spruce, yeah.
Sorry, I meant as the desirable one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
white pine.
Lo and behold, I think we came to the same place we did yesterday.
Reassess in 5 years, yes.
Yeah.
So that's where we come, going with that train of thought. But I think we could, there's no reason why we couldn't go another direction, potentially.
Well, I think right that's where the fork is. The most obvious fork was that question right there. Yeah. And if you answered yes, it does point you in a thinning direction.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you have these highly variable stands, sorry, go ahead.
I hate to ask the question with all these silviculture people around me being a lonely woodlot owner, but when you say thin, are you talking about thinning some of the crop trees or just thinning the understory or what?
It could be all of the above. I mean, if you're going to make an entry, you need, because the stand is so variable, you need to be looking at that variability and developing unique prescriptions for every little microsite.
Can we pretend for a minute that we've, come back in 5 years and it takes us down to the question, are desirable growing stock crop trees suppressed and in decline, and we say yes, and that takes us through to a thinning or a crop tree release, I guess, question. Would you mind speculating on what you, right here, what would you take out in a thinning? Specific trees, I mean, just to illustrate some of that.
Yeah, I think we have some balsam fir and white spruce and I think with the logistics of a thinning operation, you are going to target red spruce to accommodate the treatment.
Right. I see.
And but I think you would want to maintain your white pine for as they are predicted to do well for climate change and carbon sequestration, and to maintain a canopy, a % crown closure as well, to maybe nurse other species up.
What you have to be careful of is if we get too many big openings, you're going to have too much of that.
Stripe.
Yeah.
And I would say that if there was more openings, that large tooth may have done a little better. I think it's starting to reach to the top eventually, and we'll start to outcompete its competitors. Yeah.
There's not much white pine regeneration.
No, there isn't.
It's just odd, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I saw the odd one coming in, but
Coming up the
you would
slope
think
lower
to see
down.
a little
yeah.
more
Yeah.
white pine regeneration.
So the take-home message is these stands that have had past history and entries, and you get this variability, it's not black and white by no stretch of the imagination. These keys are just intended to get you thinking more about the outcome or the possible outcome of your next entry. And again, what can you do to promote long-lived, shade-tolerant species that are going to prosper in 30, 40, 50 years and continue to sequester carbon? And Megan hit on it as well. You know, that doesn't mean that the land is all of a sudden going to be in a preservation state. One of the principles are you should still be able to generate a modest income and carry out forest management and derive financial gain by still maintaining a certain carbon base and the potential to draw more.
Yeah, and there is a lot of like that feasibility issue, like how there are wide ranges of what a woodlot owner is going to think is feasible. If it's just someone with a private woodlot that they really like to go to and put work into, and they have the time and they want to go do some underplanting themselves or have a brush saw and want to go release the odd crop tree themselves, then that's something that they can do. And on a small scale, maybe that is feasible, but on a large woodlot, to do the whole thing, probably not so much.
Yeah, on a small scale, you can come in here and start targeting your fir and your other species and start creating a little bit of ground disturbance. Like red oak, for instance, that's surviving right now, but as a seedling, red oak will do well under shade, but they eventually need some sunlight to grow. So you could start creating some small holes and collect some oak acorns and broadcast them around in the fall time. Other things, depending on your objectives, but red oak is a winner for climate change. And but moving towards a more industrial perspective, if you brought a harvester in here, you would need a certain amount of volume to make it work.
That's where the definition of feasible
is
varies.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so maybe with a harvester, you maybe wait 5 years.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
Yeah.
Is the direction of government and policy that we want to work towards more wood buildings? How's that affecting kind of the market and the market requests for certain species? Is it affecting it yet, or will it within 5 years? Or
I'll let you address that one, Megan. That's more your purview.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I don't know as much about the future timber markets and how those will be affected, so I'll flip that one back to you. but I will say that there are other alternative markets that are developing. We talk about carbon all the time, carbon offsets, and I'll happily talk about that some more. But
yeah, carbon storage, long-term storage is important, and governments, across Canada, internationally, are thinking more about that. I mean, we all frequently see where building codes are changing in Canada to allow for higher wood construction, or hybrids, if you will. And the more that we can store carbon and lock it in to structures, the better off we'll be. Producing face masks and paper and tissue doesn't do anything for carbon sequestration. You need long-term storage through some type of construction. Yes, so the short answer is yes, those policies do help store more carbon. From a management perspective, that's an entirely different question. I think there really needs to be an awakening within government policy around long-term management and the species that we're promoting on both private and more so on Crown. I mean, you don't have to drive too many Crown roads to see where the focus is for the next rotation.
I think we should be considering other like wind events, blowdown as well too, with partial harvesting. So with white pine has a tap root system, so you don't often see white pine blow down. So with looking at the crop trees in here, I would be more prone to maybe do a partial treatment in this stand, because we are getting intense winds in the fall time. We are seeing a lot more blowdown. So that being said too, I mean, we got to think of weather events as well with our decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that brings up a reminder that we should always be thinking about what's under our feet too for soil types, right?
Yeah.
I know at Welgenbrand, the property that Forest International, one of the properties we own, you know, there's a rocky hillside covered in hemlock, and I think about that. That's one of my problem children for that property. But I think about that wind firmness an awful lot with those rocky hillsides, right? When you get a big wind event, if we did a harvest in there and opened it up, how much would I lose the next time it was windy, right?
Those windy events are becoming more frequent.
Exactly.
And more intense, and we really need to be conscious of it.
Yeah.
Speaking of the wind.
Yeah, that's just a nice fall breeze. Yeah. However, it is 20 degrees too in November.
Yeah.
That's how you know you have pine on the side.
Yeah.
You can close your eyes and see
you know where you're at. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, with the projection for increasing post-hurricane, post-tropical storms up here.
Yeah.
Especially, this is kind of like the corridor of that
Yep.
path, you know, cuts through Fundy Park and comes out around Miramichi kind of thing.
Yeah.
Wind events are one thing, but what we've seen, I know around Grand Lake, I can think of 2 or 3 hurricanes. I can't name them. Somebody else probably can. But 2014, we had one, and we had torrential downpours, and the ground became saturated, full of water. And then we had a hurricane, and there was acres and acres of popple around the lake. It was amazing, you know. Yeah, you know, we had 2-foot popple that had stood there for decades in one weather event in the middle of summer. You never expect that to happen. Just crisscross them everywhere. But it's these extremes, and when you get the significant rainfall and then wind right shortly after, it's a recipe for disaster. And conversely, in the wintertime, our traditional, what I call our nice dry cold snow that flutters to the floor, it's becoming rare, and particularly in this region because of the coastal effect. We're getting these frequent snowstorms that are wet, and then they land on these vulnerable red spruce, freeze, and down they go.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had forgotten there seems to be, just thinking, I'm not that old, but I do remember, I can think of a number of times more recently where you'll get a wet snow on top of ice. You know, like the wet snow will cling to the ice that's already on the branches.
Yep.
And then you get like total destruction and ripping off of branches. Like I don't remember that from 20, 30, almost 40 years ago, right? Yeah. Interesting.
And now I think back, Guy Colpitts, who owned the woodlot on the other side, experienced one of those events, those snow loads in the wintertime, and I think that might have a bearing on why he's reluctant to carry out commercial thinning, because that's in the back of his mind.
Right.
Yeah.
How long ago would that have been?
I'm going to say it's been at least a decade ago, because I can remember going through and saying, you know, sorry, Guy, because he had a lot of red spruce, and it's really prone to that ice and snow load.
I remember in 97, 98, I remember having the whole week off of school because of ice and snow. No, I'm not that old. Yeah.
You don't have to talk about age here, do we?
Well, let's see what time it is. Just so you know what we're getting into, we intentionally yesterday when we were doing the dry run, you know, we were looking for predominantly softwood stand types for the first 2, and then we're going to turn the page and we're going to go to the opposite, over on top of Piccadilly Mountain. So say goodbye to the pine. Where we're going, there won't be any of it up there.
I guess we'll just start going through the key and see where we end up. So just from the start, is this stand dominated by a single effective age? Have some shaking heads. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. There's, sort of the older, more mature, and then an understory here. So if we say it's not, is it dominated by a single effective age? No, then we go to key 3, multi-age stands. Okay, so from there, is the stand truly uneven aged with at least 3 distinct effective ages or multiple cohorts? So it looks like probably 2 aged. I wouldn't say that there's 3 distinct.
I'd agree.
You'd agree? Okay. So no, it's not truly even aged. Is the canopy composition acceptable, i.e. adequately stocked to low risk species? So the canopy we've got a few white birch, an ironwood.
Pertaining to climate change or pertaining to what's happening to the beach?
Well, that's a good point as well, because in some of the literature, it's saying that beach is predicted to do well with climate change, but with the canker, not so much. So that's kind of a caveat when you have to think about if it is adaptive. Obviously, most of this is quite diseased.
On that note, there's something happening in southern New Brunswick with beech. We're finding more and more clear beech. See that sugar maple right in front of you?
Yeah.
That's not a sugar maple.
Yeah. It's a beach.
Right here.
So overall, the province is supposed to be about 4% clean beach. You finding a higher percent than that?
It's becoming more common.
Good answer. That sounds like a Chris Spencer answer.
Go ahead, Tina, continue. But as you look around, you will start to see clean beach. And on our trip out of here, we're going to take you through a different route, and you'll be impressed.
Cool. We like to be impressed.
Yeah.
If we can find them again.
I can see some over there.
Yeah. But yeah, so the white birch, not predicted to do great with climate change, and also is a shorter lived species. But then we have all this sugar maple. Sugar maple not going to do quite as well as red, but medium well. So
Persevere, I think, is sort of where it lands.
Yeah.
We'll hang on for a while.
okay.
Yeah.
So overall, would we think that it's adequately stocked?
Boy.
The hard one.
It is.
Yeah.
And ironwood will do well, is that correct?
Yes, it is projected
Because it
to do
grows
well.
all the way down to Guatemala, doesn't it?
I don't know that, but yeah. I believe you, Dave.
Its range is broader than that of red maple.
Oh, really? Great.
Whereas red maple goes all the way to Florida.
Yeah. Yeah, ironwood is projected to do very well. To be a winner.
No black cherry on the site here, is it?
Not up here.
You got to get down in the valleys.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so are we gonna make a decision? Is it adequately stocked? If we say that it is, let's say for now that it is, and then we can go back later if we want and say that it isn't. Then we go down, is the regeneration layer present and desirable, sufficiently stocked to low risk species? Not a whole lot going on for regen here, besides some beech. We do have this one little white pine here. Yeah.
And we saw one little oak on the way in.
Yeah, and there was one little oak, but I don't think I would.
Oh yeah.
Pull it
Good,
out.
Dave.
Yeah, get rid of that for.
Some of us might call this beech the regen. So it depends on.
Yeah.
So if you looked at the beech as regen, You know, there's all kinds of it.
Okay, and is it desirable?
Now, what's desirable from what perspective? There you go.
Yeah.
Very desirable for firewood.
Okay.
Desirable for sequestering carbon.
If it's clean, it probably would be desirable for sequestering carbon. A lot of this isn't. Some of it is. So if we decide that it is desirable, then does desirable regeneration require full sunlight to develop? No, if we're going with the beach. Then we go to key 3B, uneven age silviculture systems. So this kind of shows the key is a tool, but at each intersection, you kind of have to make a decision with it that can take you in different directions. So,
sorry, Tina, you said we're following the yes, yes, yes down to
until a no for does it require full sunlight?
Okay, I'm with you now.
And then it goes to 3B. Yeah. Okay, so at 3B, is the regeneration layer and ingrowth in the stand acceptable / desirable? And if we said yes to get here, let's continue with yes. Is the present or projected dominant shade tolerant species in the regeneration layer low risk? That's yes, if we're going with the beach. Is maintaining shade intolerant to moderately shade tolerant species not desirable?
We didn't like that question yesterday. You went, what?
Yeah. Okay, so basically, is maintaining shade intolerant to moderately shade tolerant species not desirable?
So in other words, do we want to create conditions where we perpetrate the beach?
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
So that comes back to, is it desirable or not?
Yeah. And along this line of thinking, we've decided that it is desirable. So if we say yes, is the development of significant canopy gaps not desirable?
Same question. Same,
Yeah.
same version of, or a version of the same question,
Yeah.
right? You don't want light.
Yeah, so if we're trying to
Keep the
avoid,
shade.
yeah.
Right.
So if it's not desirable,
Oh my God.
then we go to yes. This one's complicated.
Yeah.
Okay.
If Gareth was here, this is where we would kick him.
Yeah. Although let's take a minute and just, be nice to Gareth, because imagine him trying to figure that out like that. How did he do that?
I don't know.
I thought we never did that if somebody wasn't here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He has an ambassador today. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we go yes, is uniform cutting desirable / feasible?
Uniform.
Difficult to get uniformity in here.
Yes,
Yeah.
because,
It's up and down.
yeah.
You mean, okay, yeah.
I don't know, to try and assume you're going to put somebody in here and say do a uniform treatment, real tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really scratch their head, wouldn't they?
Is uniform cutting desirable or feasible? So if you said no, you're done.
Well, no, so use group selection system would be the recommended treatment.
Okay.
Group selection
Yeah.
versus species selection.
Yeah, or like individual tree or,
Individual tree selection.
yeah.
So group selection would be patch cuts.
Yeah.
And then the question is how big a patch?
Yeah.
Which in a way contradicts the key, because you're creating openings for sunlight.
Right.
Yeah. I guess that would be where the size comes in if we
Size of patch.
little tiny patches so that there's not enough sun.
But beach doesn't take much of a gap for beach.
Yeah, exactly.
I know if it was me, I'd just be going after those beach.
So yesterday when we went through this,
Yeah, where did you end up?
We ended up here.
Okay.
We did, yeah.
we went back and forth a couple of times.
We did, yeah.
But when we started, the first question, we went in a different direction.
And you still landed here.
Still landed here.
Okay, because I was going to ask what happens if we decide that beech isn't a desirable species. I mean, I know we have one clear beech right here, but most of what we see is, you know, is this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
And in
if
other
we say
places
it's
in the
not
province.
desirable,
Yeah.
because we would get firewood beech no matter what we do. Even if we target the beech, we'll still have beech to burn for firewood.
Yeah.
So
Can you
It's
return
not
to what you said
desirable.
about beech from a carbon sequestration perspective?
Well, that sort of has the same issue of the diseased beech. If it weren't diseased, it would theoretically be a good tree to leave for carbon storage because it's predicted to do well if it is not diseased.
Circumstances it's not, because it's all just done. At least the older stuff, the bigger stuff is done.
yeah, and I would say the biggest concern with this regenerating, or what we're calling regenerating poor beech, not clear beech, diseased beech, is that it outcompetes anything else that's going to come up that would be a better carbon storing species,
Such as, like,
Maple.
what else would
Well,
be on this site?
The
On
little
that
white
note-
pine.
or the white pine.
When I read deeper into Anthony Taylor's theory around the sugar maple, he said the models predicted that the sugar maple would do not as well, and he speculated the reason being
Yep.
is beech, because
makes
it's going to
sense.
do so well,
Yeah.
it's going to outcompete.
It's going to outcompete, but stay stunted
Yeah.
and poor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we get done here trying to figure this stand out, we're going to take you down and show you what can happen when you get in here and start opening the stand up too much. So if you're curious what it would look
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would argue that we don't generally see a lot of clean beech in our forests here, and having the advantage of walking in this way yesterday, we did see some clean beech. So I think that makes this stand unique in a way, because I don't know how many people here have walked some clean beech stands in New Brunswick, but I personally haven't seen too many stands that had clean beech in them. And as we all know, regeneration, it's in genetics, so if there is clean beech here, we are gonna regenerate clean beech for the future. And with our changing climate, I think we should take that into consideration for managing for beech. I know we're all looking at the beech bark disease or the canker and thinking firewood and cutting that out, but I think we're supposed to be thinking about the future and the changing climate and what we're here to work with too. So yeah.
I know, and we're guilty of this because we've been talking about
Yeah,
carbon
that's
offsets
right.
for
There you go.
almost a decade.
Yeah.
That it, it
Yeah.
gets people's hopes up, and then they get frustrated and tired of hearing about it. So I'm sorry for that. And also, I do keep having hope that it is a solution that will pay incentives to landowners. And we've just had, I mean, as I mentioned, the programs are, at a snail's pace moving along. But also we've had more recent indications, again, like the federal government is very interested in something called nature-based climate solutions. There's this renewed interest, like through the 2 billion trees initiative and planting 2 billion trees. Like there's a lot of interest at the federal level and the provincial level and even in private corporations to get something moving with regards to climate change, like to make actual impacts on climate change. And these are the mechanisms that are already poised to go, like carbon offsets are pretty ready to go. So I say that just to, I don't know, give everybody hope again.
So back to this stand.
Well, if you leave that white birch and leave that sugar maple and that ironwood and that white birch over there, you've almost got canopy closures with those guys. Mm-hmm. Be interesting to see how much shade you could actually, what your basal area could be if you.
well, this would be an extremely different looking spot if it was leaves on.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be looking at the sky. Yeah. You couldn't see down through here 10 feet. When we went through the key yesterday, didn't we come to one conclusion, just leave it alone too?
Yeah. Must be getting lazy then.
Well, I mean, right, reassess in 5 years and see what it's done, what it's changed.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, from a forest management silvicultural perspective, from fiber perspective, when you look at a stand like this, you ask yourself, is there anything threatened? Is there anything that's going to drop out in the next decade? No. So there's no harm. You know, quite often our management decisions are based on that knee-jerk position. You look at the stand, you go, oh geez, that needs attention because it's going to be jeopardized in 10 years. That isn't the case here when you look around.
The white birch is pretty reasonably healthy, isn't it? Little dieback on that guy. But
Yeah, so like the white birch is the only thing that
you would start to lose. Yeah.
And if you're wondering about form, the reason that these aren't the greatest, we are on top of a mountain in southern New Brunswick. So this is a bit of an isolated snow belt. So that's what's going on here. Ice and snow continually beat away at the tops of these.
But like right here, like this, to me, this is a nice beach that I would want to leave. And then you got these trees that you may want to, if you wanted to do a low thinning in here, like Megan talked about earlier about at the first stop, or the second stop, I believe. It would be time consuming, a labor of love, but we're getting to the woodlot owner management level. And you can identify your semi-clean to clean beach in the understory and start targeting those diseased beach to create more growing space in the understory and try to provide those options. I'm just thinking out loud here as we're sitting here, but we know it's fully stocked with beech in the understory, 100% stocked. And I think as woodlot owners and managers, we want diversity for the future. And I think trying to focus on other species to provide more options that benefit well in climate change down the road, that would be one way of myself looking at it, I guess. Yeah.
Species diversity is your friend in a changing climate.
yeah.
Yeah, you could almost sort of do that low thinning while you're in here picking out your firewood. Yeah.
Well, you don't have to split this stuff, Dave.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you had a pocket full of acorns while you were going,
Yeah.
just
Well, do we want to do a loop?
Yeah.
All right, so
Let us see your
we're just
figure.
going to crest this hill. All right, guys, we're going to try the last hardwood stand here. And as you can see, you know, we're not very far. I was saying to Megan, on private woodlots, they're kind of unique. Like if you want to see a different stand type, all you got to do is just walk 5 minutes. And I mean, it's still hardwood, but you know, it's definitely a different stand composition here. So Tina's going to give it another whirl here and see if we can find something more conclusive on this one.
All right, so again, always starting with the age structure. Is a stand dominated by a single effective age? It's definitely closer.
Yeah. This is one of the subjective questions. When you look at it, it's hard to wipe out the codominance or the understory, but when you look at it, you know, 80% of the merchantable volume here is one age class, more or less. The understory or the second age class isn't as significant.
Right.
So it kind of steers you to say that it's somewhat even aged.
Yeah. Dominated by a single effective
Yeah,
age.
yeah.
So we'll go with yes, and that takes us to key 2. Is the stand in the stand initiation stage? No, it's pretty well established here. Is the stand in the stem exclusion stage? So stem exclusion, again, being that there's not adequate canopy gaps to have really any regeneration or understory coming through.
Yes.
So yes, stem exclusion?
Well, when somebody asks me exclusion stage, I also look at their individual stems that are dropping out. And of course, the white birch, as you can see here, several of them are dropping out. So I would consider it in the exclusions stage, yeah.
Okay. All right. So
Backed up by somebody who knows what he's talking about.
that would be, so if we're saying it is in stem exclusion, go to key 2B, stem exclusion stages. Figure out how my thing's flipping around here. I said B, right? Yeah, there we go. Okay, so is the canopy composition acceptable, adequately stocked to low risk species? So here we have the white birch, we have more red maple.
Tough one.
What's
It is
the
tough.
outlook for white birch?
Not very good.
No.
Not great.
Good for red.
But
So it's good for red maple, not so good for white birch.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything.
Go ahead.
Carry
No.
on.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the white birch isn't going to regenerate in this stand, right? Or
Right.
not much. So the white birch that's in the canopy now it's not a concern for the future of this, right? Like it's going to
Right.
drop out and that's that. Like either it gets harvested or it dies and we don't have to worry about white birch, the future of white birch on this stand.
Right. Yeah, that is a good way to think of it.
If that helps.
Yeah. I don't know if it helps.
I don't know if
it's-
it helps. Or if it just makes it more complicated.
So that goes back to landowner objectives, doesn't it? So if somebody was looking for firewood and they wanted to bring this with them to make sure they're doing the right thing to cut the firewood.
They'd come and cut the white birch. Yeah.
Yeah.
And your diseased whatever and a beech.
Yeah. And it looks some ironwood coming in too. So I think with the exception of the white birch, I would probably argue that this is stocked to acceptable species that are going to do well with climate change. So if we say yes, go to key 3, multi-age stands. Is the stand truly uneven age with at least 3 distinctive effective ages? Where we said it was mostly single age, then that would be no. Is the canopy composition acceptable? Adequate stock to low risk species? To get here, we said yes. So if we continue along there. Is the regeneration layer present and desirable? Sufficiently stocked to low risk species? There's not much here and it's just kind of these odd beach, so no. That was regeneration. Go to 3A. Is the regeneration layer desirable? We said no. Is the stand mature and has reached the ideal time to regenerate the stand? And or are there no desirable crop trees to work with? There are desirable crop trees, but are they mature? Close. Again, more so like the white birch is probably around maturity.
Well, the maple's they're not kids either, although there are more medium age.
So when you get to these questionable options, there's absolutely nothing wrong with going down both paths to see.
Which one fits?
Yeah, and see which one fits.
I wouldn't mind going back to the first one. It says, is the canopy composition filled enough with low-risk species? So if you took the white birch out, which is a high-risk species, is it not? Does it
Yep.
still have a good enough canopy cover?
Well, we're speculating that there's enough red maple to kind of fill the gaps, and ironwood.
Yeah. But again, yeah, it is sort of,
This is a borderline stand for sure.
yeah.
Like if you sort of close your eyes to the white birch and the diseased beech,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and then
Then yeah, it really isn't super well stocked.
it's not super well stocked. And the regen layer or the mid canopy is balsam fir.
Yeah.
And some other things too that don't have leaves on them, so sometimes I look past them. But
If you looked at it purely from thinking, say 10 years ahead, 20 years ahead, what do we need to do to get more carbon sequestered? That's what's going to drive your prescription. So to Gig's point, if you remove the birch that's on its way out, is the stand adequately stocked? Meh. So what do we need to do in the meantime to get the stand set up to start that next crop underneath?
Right.
And that's when you look at these options, you go down these different routes and say, well, what's going to give me the prescription that I think the stand needs? And you shouldn't bias it, but like I say, you got to look at the options.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's sort of 50-50, go down both paths and see what fits better based on your experience and the objectives.
Is there any way for a white birch tree to end up as sequestered carbon?
Yes.
Spoolwood, it goes into the air.
That spoolwood?
Oh, spoolwood. No,
Spoolwood,
no.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
engineer.
40
And
years ago,
solid.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it,
Actually, it used to be, from a commercial point of view, it used to be terrific.
Oh, yeah.
You had great recovery of product, high value product from it, and all was all in solid wood.
yeah, veneers.
But
It
it's
is.
such a thing now.
Yeah.
Now it sucks. No, it's not.
But if it just goes up the chimney, it doesn't really help a lot.
Goes up the chimney or into some kinds of pulp.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no way.
Nope.
But if it goes into the dissolving, if it goes into clothing, then you got, I don't know.
Yeah.
Some of
I
us,
don't want to be personal.
20 years.
And then it can go to a rag bag. Stick around another 10 years.
All right, Tina, see if you can get a conclusion here.
Okay. Okay, so if we continue along the idea where we were of saying that it is well stocked, and then we can go back and go through it saying it's not. Okay, so if we're saying that it is well stocked now, is it mature?
This is another one of those like definition things because for carbon, it's not.
Right.
Merchantable, some of it is, right?
Yeah. All right.
Again with the landowner's
So let's say
ideal,
no.
their goals.
And the trouble with the red maple stand, quite often you mess around, come back a couple years later, and the red maple is looking good. Now it's not looking so good.
Well, see what happens if you say it's not mature, and go down the no path and see what happens.
All right, so then are desirable growing stock / crop trees suppressed and in decline? No, I wouldn't think so.
Not really.
Reassess in 5 years. So,
A very common prescription when you're writing a management plan.
yeah,
And you come in, you go, you know, it's not really jumping out at me. You know, come back in 5 years.
yeah. As long as there's no risk of it falling down in the next 4, then that's
So go
perfectly
back
reasonable.
here to where it says is the stand mature, and go down the S path and see what happens.
Okay, so if we decide that this is mature, can desirable, i.e. low risk, mature natural regeneration be established through sylvicultural treatment?
Could we get some sugar maple and white pine to germinate here, or is the beech going to take over like it did back there?
Or the balsam fir.
Yeah, that's already.
Yeah, I wouldn't be so worried about the fir.
Okay. I'm always worried about fir.
Yeah, and for
Fir's
good
very
reason.
worrisome.
It only takes about 1 per acre to completely germinate a stand. So you remember that sugar maple stand where they really got it open? We seen what happened. The beech really took over. So if you were to entertain a partial cut to try and promote other species, my advice would be very careful not to open it up too much.
So not a group patch.
If you do group,
You'd have
the beech,
it all.
the beech is just
yeah.
going to come.
Yeah. So that means that you'd be looking more at that.
Well, if you go down this, yes,
Yeah.
Can natural regen be established through a partial cut? Will you end up down here, partial timber harvest? Is it feasible or desirable?
But if it is, then that takes you to a group patch shelter wood. So you'd have to be just real careful with your patch
Well,
size.
if
And
you
then
said
if
it
you-
wasn't feasible and you said
Okay.
no, there's another suggestion
Yeah.
here, understory and or prep treatment.
Hoping
Yeah.
that you get something like white pine seeding and
Yeah.
coming in. Okay.
Yeah. And that's another thing we can add to feasible
Yeah.
is, yes, you could do it, but knowing what happened over there, that if you do it, you're likely to get a bunch of beech, then it's no longer a good option. So you would say, no, it's not feasible because I think this is the outcome.
Definitely breaking up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Look overhead.
But through association, wouldn't you also, let's say you opened it up, beech would come up, but through association, you're gonna have some sugar maples in there.
Yeah, but sugar maple is not really prevalent in here. Like, there's not much of it. It's a lot of red maple.
So what, if we do remove the beech, what are we?
Well, I mean, you could really think off the wall. I mean, if you're really stuck and you're looking around and you're saying, you know, the desirables aren't here, the white pine and the red spruce, go buy a tray. Go buy a tray of white pine and red spruce and fire some in it. We have a landowner over here, like, everybody once in a while you'll say, well, I'm going to underplant my hardwood stand, and there's a tendency to go, oh yeah, yes, you know, how's that work? Anyway, Richard McLeod, he's a woodlot owner that lives out in front of this property. We assisted him in doing an underplant of red spruce in a mixed hardwood stand, a lot like this. And 10 years later, we went back and I was amazed, like they were still there. And he hired a contractor, Tim McMillan, he went through and picked out all the junk and protected every one of those underplanted red spruce. And today you go in there and you go, wow, look at that, it worked.
Amazing.
Yeah, but the guy that's in the cab, you got to have him on your side, because you spent 10 years trying to promote that red spruce so that you'd have a crop ready when you took the top off, and make sure that he's prepared to try and protect that. So this stand, if you just left it, you know, 5 years, 10 years, it's going to slowly break up. That white birch is going to come apart. Yeah. If you were in here, you know, the oak acorns, the white pine, some red spruce, get some diversity in here, and as it starts breaking up.
Yeah. And wherever possible, drive over the balsam fir and. Well, you know, just, bump into that balsam fir, you know.
Our provincial tree.
I know, I'm
Yeah.
hard on them, but
But if it's partway
Death
grown,
to the root.
wouldn't it be worth keeping for one more harvest?
yeah,
Because it grows quick enough that, you know, if this is going to be an issue 25, 30 years, well, those trees might be harvested.
yeah, the concern is that it becomes a seed source to keep promoting balsam fir that would prevent other species from colonizing, because it'll perpetuate under shade.
Gulmage.
Yeah.
What it is?
Yeah.
Is Eldred?
Gulmage.
Dolmy.
So, yeah, valid question. Fir has got so many strikes against it right now. I mean, we've got the budworm outbreak in the Gas Bay in northern New Brunswick. We've got balsam woolly adelgid coming from the south, from Nova Scotia. You know, you've got gulmage, you name it. When you get 2 or 3 strikes against one species, it really causes you to question the long-term viability. But you're right, it is a very fast-growing crop, but you got to watch it and keep, you know, make sure you don't lose your investment.
All right, so did we want to go back to saying that this was not adequately stocked?
Sure, yep.
Okay, I can't remember how far back
That was key 2, I
So
think.
we're on key 2. Is it in stand initiation? No. Is it in stem exclusion?
You said yes there, and then we went to 2B.
Okay, here we are.
And this is where Gig said we should pause. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yep.
No, it's worth exploring.
Yep.
yeah, it absolutely is. So is the canopy composition acceptable? We said yes.
Adequately stocked, and Gig said, are you sure it's adequately stocked? Well, it said with low-risk species, so.
So if we say no and go the other way, is the understory and or regeneration layer acceptable, adequately stocked for lower species? Also no. Can desirable, i.e. low risk, natural regeneration be established through silvicultural treatment?
Possibly.
Maybe.
Silviculture treatment's pretty broad.
Yeah. So if we said yes, then that would take us back to 3.
I think it's a loop.
Yeah.
A continuous loop.
And then, yeah, so 3 would be, is the stand truly uneven aged?
And
No.
we determined no.
Is the canopy composition acceptable with low risk species? If we're saying no, then we go to 3A, which is the irregular system. Is regeneration layer desirable, sufficiently stocked to low risk species? Still no. Is the stand mature and has reached the ideal time to regenerate the stand?
So we're going down the same path here.
Yeah, so we're on the same.
Yeah.
So that one took us the same place.
It just goes to prove that there's no easy, straight answer. There's options. But it forces you to think. Yeah. What's going to happen?
Yeah, I think that is sort of the biggest use of the tool, is to just get you thinking more along those lines rather than just
fiber.
yeah.
Forces you to ask the question, different options.
Yeah.
You're just saying, well, you know, the typical run-of-the-mill,
Yeah.
we're just going to pin this and that, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
So you're actually looking through different options and then making
Yeah,
a more
exactly.
informed, better informed decision, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Like to think climate isn't changing. I'm help look after our reforestation program at SMB, and the past 3 years, reforestation has become extremely challenging. We planted this spring, and I think we had more than 10 weeks, not a drop of rain. Starting right in mid-April, well, 1st of May, we went 10 weeks, not a drop of rain. You know, that, and this is becoming a problem, and it's a reflection of changing climate. Drought stress and the old systems that we counted on 10 and 20 years ago, you can't count on them anymore.
So in that case, stuff like underplanting, where there's a canopy to keep the shade and
Yep.
maybe not have as much moisture loss in the soil, is going to become important to regenerating stands.
Absolutely.